A gland is one or more cells that secretes a substance released by a vesicle, which is like a little bubble inside the cell. There are different types of glands that we need to classify. There's endocrine versus exocrine, unicellular versus multicellular. We know unicellular means one cell, multicellular many cells. However, we need to clear up endocrine versus exocrine first. Endocrine glands, which we are not talking about in this chapter, but I want to clarify this as opposed to exocrine glands, which we are talking about. Endocrine glands, they're ductless glands, and you can think of them as organs that secrete hormones into the bloodstream. In the bloodstream, they circulate through the entire body. They'll have an effect on a target organ that is sensitive to that particular hormone. Now contrast this to what's more relevant in this chapter, and that's exocrine glands. Exocrine glands secrete their products into ducts, but instead of secreting hormones into the bloodstream, they secrete their product in the local area where they're located. Their product is not circulated. They secrete material right next to where the gland exists. Think of glands in your skin, like sweat and oil. We also have salivary glands and mucus glands. These secretions aren't meant to be circulated in the bloodstream. They're meant to act in their local area. In this slide, we see a unicellular exocrine gland called a goblet cell or a mucus cell. It produces mucus. There's the DNA code, or the chromatin inside the nucleus, which codes for proteins. Well, the protein that this cell is going to produce is called mucin. Transcription, translation, recall from previous chapters, we produce the protein mucin. Mucin then goes into the Golgi apparatus, gets packaged into these vesicles, and then it mixes with water where it becomes mucus, and then it is excreted, or I should say secreted, onto the surface of the cell. There are two different modes of secretion. Pay attention to these two terms because next chapter will have other terms sounding very much like it, and they'll start running together in your head. So, glands secrete two ways. If the gland is merocrine, it secretes by exocytosis. So here's a merocrine gland composed of many cells, and you can see the tiny little bubbles, which are vesicles that are secreting their substance through exocytosis, releasing into the duct, and then onto the surface of the cell. Sweat glands, salivary glands work this way. However, we have other types of glands called holocrine gland that don't use exocytosis. Instead, the cell breaks apart or it ruptures to release the product or secrete the product. So here we see a multicellular gland again. The cells at the base are going through mitosis, they're dividing, and they're pushing the cells up to the surface. These cells at the surface are rupturing, secreting their product into the duct. We see this with oil glands, which we call sebaceous glands in our skin. So merocrine is for exocytosis, holocrine secretes through cell rupture.